Now on Radio Glamorgan, something special just for you.
Hello and welcome to the Six Nations edition of the Sporting Roundup, a sports show brought to you by third-year students at the University of South Wales. I'm Dylan James and I'll be your host today. I'm joined by fellow students James Dodd and Ben Jones. So Wales kick off their second round of the Six Nations on Saturday against Scotland at 4:45 in Murrayfield. So let's take a look at the team then, boys. So at loose head, we've got Wyn Jones, hooker Ken Owens, tight head, we've got Thomas Francis. In the second row, we've got Adam Beard and Alan Wyn Jones. In the back row, we got Wainwright on the blind side, Tipperick at 7 and Falatau at 8. Gareth Davis and Dan Bigger form the half-back partnership. Liam Williams and Rhys Zammit occupy the wing positions, and a new midfield partnership of Tompkins and Watkin, with Lee Halfpenny assuming his role at fullback. Willis Halaholo of the Cardiff Blues is also included on the bench in line for his first cap, and James Botham, who appeared during the Autumn Nations Cup, is also on the bench looking to make an appearance in the Six Nations. So what are the main points you can draw from this team? Anyone you would have expected to be in there, Dodd?
Well, firstly, you've got to feel sorry for Josh McLeod and Josh Navidi, who are both out. Josh McLeod has done his Achilles tendon, so he's out for I believe 6 months, and Navidi has a bit of a sore neck, I believe. So obviously that is devastating for the back row. But when you look at Wainwright, Tipperick, and Falatau, that is a really impressive back row, particularly Tipperick, how he played last week against Ireland. So I think Justin Tipperick in the forwards is going to be key for Wales on Saturday.
Ben, what about you?
Yeah, obviously, to echo what Dodd said, it's unfortunate about Josh McLeod, really, isn't it? But Wainwright's proved that he can come in and do a job. Obviously, at the centre position, you had North, who started slow last week, but really kind of grew into the game. So he's going to be a big miss as well, I think. And then even at scrum half with Gareth Davis, he brings something different to what Thomas Williams would. I think Thomas Williams merited his start last week and he played well in the first half. And then obviously, unfortunately, got injured as well, adding to the long list that Wales have. But Gareth Davis will come in and step in and do a job. He's experienced. So it should be a good game.
Yeah, I think it will be a good contest, definitely considering Scotland's performance last week against England. Like you mentioned, Ben, Wales are undergoing some injury crisis at the moment. So they've had to call up Cardiff Blues trio, Lloyd Williams, Willis Halaholo and James Botham as cover. And then go back to Gareth Davis. Now, he is a very experienced player, over 200 appearances for the Scarlets. And he links up with Bigger for this fixture with the injured Thomas Williams out of contention. So he'll be no doubt trying to regain the respect of the Welsh fans after his less than impressive kick in the dying moments of the game last week. Dodd, what did you make of the decision to make that kick?
Yeah, it was pretty poor, obviously, wasn't it? Nearly cost Wales the game from being in such a good position with 10 seconds to go to, if Billy Burns, kicked to the corner well, Wales are in all sorts of problems. And Wayne Pivac said after, they've been brutally honest with him, that was completely unacceptable.
Yeah, so going to the 9 position now. A lot of fans were very interested to know why Rhys Webb hadn't been considered. He put in a man of the match performance for the Ospreys, I think it was last week, which really sent a message to Wayne Pivac, who chose not to include him in his squad. But when Thomas Williams did become injured, a lot of fans were expecting him to receive his call-up. And in a press conference this week, Wayne Pivac gave his explanation for leaving Rhys Webb out of the selection choices. And he said, Rhys talked about not wanting to be number 3, and Lloyd is a perfect number 3 for us. Now, Dodd, I think you liked that quote, didn't you?
I did, really, because I think, Wayne Pivac was honest with Rhys Webb. He said, he doesn't feel that he's accurate enough, and he's quick enough for number 9. I don't think, he's spoken to him one-on-one saying that. He's not, saying it behind his back, saying it to the media before him. So he was honest. And then Rhys Webb sort of responds by not being picked, to just sort of saying that he's kind of glad he doesn't want to be third choice. So I think there's a good, it is a really good line from Pivac. But I also believe that from saying those things to Webb that he probably would have picked Lloyd Williams over Webb as well anyway.
So Ben, moving over to you then. If I was to say to you that you would ground out your position in the Wales team, you were in line to get your first cap. You're only 24 years of age. You get told by the coach that you're going to be in the team. And half an hour later, you sustain an injury, which puts you out for 6 months. And that's exactly what has happened to young Josh McLeod of the Scarlets. So what is it like for him? What can you imagine what's going through his head right now?
Well, first off, it would just be frustration, wouldn't it? I mean, you've come through the ranks as the Scarlets. You've really tried to put in your performance, and it's merited by getting a call up for Wales and obviously a start. He's obviously been around the team for however long, and then he finally gets that start in Jersey, and then ruptures his Achilles tendon, which is it's a horrible injury to get as well. But like I mentioned to you guys before, I think the only benefit of having an injury that long is that he's not going to be out for 3 or 4 weeks and miss the whole of the Six Nations to come back just after. He knows he's out. He knows he's not in contention to come back. Sorry, but yeah, I think he'll be frustrated. He'll be angry, but I think he'll just want to make sure he focuses on the return to fitness, ready for the autumn, to really make a push for the next Six Nations, which will come around sooner rather than later as well.
So going back to your side, Dodd, the Cardiff Blues, Willis Halaholo, centre, New Zealand born. However, he qualifies to play for Wales through the 3-year residency ruling. He's come under quite a bit of scrutiny in the week. A lot of people calling for Welsh-born players to play for Wales. However, like Wayne Pivac said in the week, no one was complaining when Hadley Parks, who qualified through residency, scored 2 tries in his debut. No one was complaining about his eligibility then. So we mentioned creativity, and Halaholo is that creativity. Do you think it'll be exciting to see him in the Wales team?
Yes, definitely. If he plays anything like he has done for the Blues in the last few years, then there's definitely something to be excited about. And Wayne Pivac, mentioned it, how he offers something that no one else does. I think he's, out of all the centres in the Wales team, I think he's got the best record in terms of defenders beaten as well, playing for the Blues. So yeah, he's got so much to offer. His footwork, defensively as well, he's surprisingly very strong. So yeah, all in all, I hope I really hope he gets a decent amount of time on Saturday, because you don't really want to make your debut and only play a minute and not really have any impact. So he'll want to go on for a good portion of that second half, and I think he'll do a good job.
So that's enough of our talking now. I'm sure you want to hear some music. Your first song is 500 Miles by Scottish band The Proclaimers. Very fitting. You're listening to Radio Glamorgan from the heart of the Heath Hospital. That was 500 Miles by The Proclaimers, an absolute classic. So Ben, over to you now. I want you to give me a lowdown on this Scottish team who are performing so well at the moment.
Yeah, so Scotland come off a win in round 1. They beat England 11-6 at Twickenham in the first round, and they could have beaten them by more if they were a bit more ruthless and taking their chances. It was a dogged performance. It was gritty. It was determined. And they set themselves up for a really good Six Nations. So they had 62% possession and 58% territory in the win, and they didn't lose a single line out. They went 15 out of 15, and they were the only team in the first round to do it. So captain Stuart Hargey led from the front. He gained 88 metres with the ball in hand, and that took him past Sergio Parise as the player to gain the most in Six Nations history, with 3,091. So guys, do you reckon Scotland are genuine title contenders?
Oh, most definitely. I think they've always been sort of around there. They've always been able to compete with the top teams in the Six Nations, but they've never quite managed to kind of put the consistent performances in across a whole championship to actually finish first. I think that the most significant part of the last kind of 6 months or so is that they've managed to beat Wales away for the first time in a long time, and they've done it to England, and that's always been their Achilles heel, is not being able to win away games. So and obviously there's we are playing behind closed doors, so that does have an impact as well. But to beat England away, I think they have Wales, Ireland and Italy all at Murrayfield. Those 3 are all winnable games. So, and even 4 out of 5 is a good enough for a win. So they'll be really, really confident. They just got to back it up now this weekend, and hopefully they don't.
Yeah, I think we're seeing a bit of a birth of a newly competitive Scotland side. Like Dodd referred to, you can say that there was an empty stadium. Different times they beat Wales in Wales, but it was in Parc y Scars. It doesn't matter. They've beaten Wales. They've set a new record, and they've just beaten England. I think the players they've got coming through. Finn Russell's in his prime at the moment. Hogg's kick in last weekend against England was incredible. Spiral kick he did right into the corner was unbelievable. And Duhan van der Merwe breaking through and making a hell of an impact. So I really do think this Scotland side could pose a threat and really make a challenge for the tournament.
Yeah, so like you've just mentioned, obviously they're in a good run of form and they're playing well, and like you said, winnable games, Dodd. So they've won the 2 of their last 4 games against Wales, and that was more than they've managed in their previous 13 championship meetings. And obviously, alluding to Murrayfield, and it is a bit of a fortress at the minute. They've conceded just 59 points in their 4 games in 2020, which is an average of 14.8 a game, and that was their 3rd lowest as such in matches in a calendar year in the professional era, and their lowest since 2011. So Wales really do face a stern task against a very defensive outlet. So how do Wales come away with a win on Saturday? What's the game plan that Pivek needs to set up?
I think depending on the weather, I think it could be very cold. I'm not sure if it's meant to be raining. I'm not sure how windy it's meant to be. I think it doesn't sound particularly pretty, but I think the way Wales are going to win games at the moment is probably to kind of stick the ball up in the air, compete in the air, and gain territory from kicks and kind of grind Scotland down. I'm not quite sure how the set piece is going to go, so that might be an area of weakness. But I think you've got Bigger in the air, Halfpenny, it is pretty solid at times in the air. So you've got a goal and a way to win that game. I think is territorially and kicking the ball and finding space. But obviously, you've seen how good Hogg and Russell are at kicking. So look, it'll be an interesting one, but I don't think Wales will be throwing the ball around too much.
I agree. I don't think there's going to be an awful lot of creativity in the midfield. I think the threat is probably going to come from the wingers. Liam Williams coming back. We all know what he's about. He's a British and Irish Lion. Silly for what he did against the Blues on Shane Lewis-Hughes there. But I think he'll come back stronger than ever. Dodd, you were speaking to me before we recorded this, and you believe that the fire is going to be in his belly coming back in this fixture.
Yeah, Gethin Jenkins said earlier in the week before the squad was announced that if he's picked, he'll be raring to go. So, I do believe that as well. And yeah, in between October 2019 and October 2020, he only managed 1 game. So, and he played 3 times in the Autumn Nations Cup, but he want a lot more consistency in appearing in the red jersey now. And I think he'll do a good job on the wing. I think he'll be fired up.
You're listening to Radio Glamorgan.
So our next song is Postcards from a Young Man by legendary Welsh band, the Manic Street Preachers. That was Postcards from a Young Man by the Manic Street Preachers. So, James, I hear you're giving us the lowdown on the Scottish sensation that is Duhan van der Merwe.
Yes, well, if anyone watched last week's Scotland against England game, then you'll know how impressive this man is. He was born and grew up in South Africa, and he played for the Blue Bulls, Montpellier in France, and then joined Edinburgh in 2017. And he averaged a try every other game for Edinburgh, and was named the Pro 14 Players Player of the season for the 2019-2020 campaign. So that just shows, how impressive he has been. And he made his debut in October 2020 against Georgia and scored. And like I said, he scored the only try last week. He starts at 11 this week. Extremely powerful runner. He'll be a very, very big threat for Wales.
So moving on to our third and final song, we have Yma o Hyd by Dafydd Iwan. It's a shame we won't be hearing this ringing around Murrayfield from the travelling fans on the weekend. We can sing from home, can't we? That was Yma o Hyd by David Iwan, a song which resonates with a Wales Six Nations match day.
Radio Glamorgan.
So James, tell me who you interviewed in the week.
Yeah, so earlier in the week, I spoke to Australian rugby legend Michael Lynagh about all things rugby, including his incredible Australian rugby career, his time in Italy, and his time playing in England.
So let's hear a snippet of that now.
Yeah, it was an amazing time. We had a really, well, obviously as it turned out, we had a great team, but it was a good team from a balance point of view. There was quite a few experienced guys. There was quite a few young guys coming through. We weren't given much of a chance of doing it, doing anything great on that trip. It was the previous trip, the Australian team in 81, 82, that was sort of being touted as the possible Grand Slam winners for Australia for the first time, but they didn't do as well as expected. So 84, our expectations, ours were obviously we wanted to win every game, but the expectations from outside weren't that high for us. And it was a pretty tough tour, but I must admit it was a happy one. Alan Jones, the coach, worked us very, very hard back in the amateur days. But as a young sort of 19, 20-year-old on that tour, 20-year-old, it was a great time. You know, we were playing a really nice brand of rugby. We were winning. You know, as a 20-year-old, you were touring around, you know, the Northern Hemisphere with your, 25 of your mates. And it was a little bit different to the tours that you see these days. I think we had 27 players. We played 19 games over quite a long period. I think it was 2.5 month tour. And of that 19 games, I played 12 of them. So it was quite arduous. We'd play Saturday, Wednesday, Saturday, and in between we'd often, have to we're all doing it by coach bus rides. So it was quite tough, but it was great fun. And obviously winning the 4 test matches and the Barbarians game was a great memory. And but we did it in playing some good stuff. And I remember early on, because I was the second string sort of fly half to Mark Ella, and it was going to be hard to unseat him because he was such a great player. But I remember the coach telling me early on that we want a goal kicker. Goal kicker is really important, particularly in the Northern Hemisphere, and you're the best goal kicker in the team.
That was the Six Nations edition of the Sporting Roundup quiz. We hope you enjoyed, and we hope you enjoy this weekend's sporting action too. Unfortunately, that's the end of the show for this week, but we leave you with plenty of rugby to look forward to. That's all from myself, James, and Ben on Radio Glamorgan. Thank you for listening to us, and have a great weekend. I'm going to leave you with a Welsh rugby poem to finish. The Welsh have feelings about rugby no other nation can describe. They sing all their rugby songs to keep the game alive. We hate to lose at rugby and cannot stand defeat. Their songs are sang much louder as they stand out on their seats. The Millennium Stadium is their national rugby ground. You need to see a Welsh rugby match to enjoy the immense sound. The 3 feathers as a logo sits right above Welsh hearts. They sing their national anthem before the rugby starts. So come on, the Welsh rugby teams. Play the game like a proper side because the nation is behind you. So play the game with pride.